As someone who is adamantly against the idea of Pixar making Toy Story 4 for reasons that you've no doubt heard many other people before me complain about, i.e. it's not necessary, the third film had such a perfect conclusion, etc., you might think I'd be equally cynical of Lightyear. But when it was first announced, I was honestly pretty on board with the concept. Buzz Lightyear was always established to have this huge franchise which we only ever got to see small glimpses and descriptions of in the Toy Story movies, so it seemed like a cool idea to make a movie exploring it. I mean, there was the direct-to-video Buzz Lightyear Star Command movie and the accompanying animated series, but still. Plus, it seemed disconnected enough from Toy Story that it didn't just feel like an unnecessary continuation. But having potential is really only the first step. So let's look and see if this movie actually does manage to reach infinity, or indeed beyond. The plot involves the pre-plastic surgery Buzz Lightyear, a space ranger for the agency's Star Command, exploring uncharted reaches of the cosmos. During travels, he chooses to explore an unknown planet along with his commander and best friend Alicia Hawthorne. The planet turns out to be hostile, and in a rush to escape, Buzz crashes the ship, stranding the entire crew. Over time, the crew colonizes while they attempt to develop a stable hyperspace fuel to escape, which Buzz volunteers to test to redeem himself. Upon a successful test to a fuel source, Buzz discovers that the speed he was traveling at warped him decades into the future, where things at the colony aren't exactly as he left them. The colony is under attack from an unknown entity known as Zerg, and Buzz, unable to make contact with Star Command, is forced to enlist the help of less than experienced cadets, including Mo Morrison, Darby Steele, and Alicia's granddaughter Izzy Hawthorne, to take down Zerg and his forces and save Star Command. So right off the bat, I'm really into the way the movie teases the reveal of this new version of Buzz in the opening scene by showing him off little by little. First we see his face on a computer screen, but he's out of costume and it's only on screen for a second. Then we cut to a longer shot of him in silhouette in a cryogenics chamber labeled Lightyear. He wakes from the chamber, giving us a full body silhouette, building up the reveal even more. He sets a course for the planet and we get to hear his voice for the first time.
Buzz Lightyear mission log, stardate 3901. Sensors have detected potential life forms on an uncharted planet.
We then see him fully suited up, but from behind and still in relative darkness. He steps foot in the planet and we get a shot that pans upward, as we get a glimpse of the suit before being obscured by the sunlight, giving us one last split-second tease before we finally get the reveal of the human Buzz Lightyear. And this design is everything I would have wanted from this take on the character. In fact, the art style in general does a great job of adapting the Toy Story character designs into this kind of story. They manage to maintain the basic look and proportions of the original characters, but are slightly more detailed and less exaggerated to give it a more realistic look, instead of just looking like plastic toys. I also like Chris Evans as Buzz. I admit I initially kind of questioned him being cast instead of Tim Allen from the Toy Story movies. To me, it just seemed like Allen had been tossed aside for the sake of getting an A-list actor, and it still wouldn't surprise me if that had something to do with it, but overall, I think Evans still pulls it off. He captures the same authoritative but noble hero vibe that Allen had, but reins it in slightly to better suit the tone the movie is going for. Allen's voice was comparatively a lot more over the top, which worked perfectly for Toy Story's tone, as well as the fact that that version of Buzz was intended as a parody of action figures.
Has your mind been melded? You could have killed me, Space Ranger. Or should I say, traitor?
Lightyear, on the other hand, tells a relatively more grounded and serious story, so casting a slightly more subtle actor makes sense in that regard. Plus, it helps to set Lightyear apart a bit more.
Well, if it bothers you, Commander Hawthorne, I'm happy to wait back on the turnip.
Please don't call it the turnip.
But the ship looks like a root vegetable.
As for Buzz's characterization, he's handled decently. I think that aforementioned nobility he displays is a big positive. After he crashes the ship, for example, I like how he accepts full responsibility and how much he's willing to sacrifice to make up for it. I mean, the guy is literally willing to make one-way trips decades into the future, leaving behind his relationship with his best friend to help the Star Command crew get their lives back to normal. Side note, what is it with Chris Evans playing characters that get stuck in the future? And yes, I'm sure I'm not the first person to make that honestly not particularly clever observation, but I felt clever very briefly and I wanted you all to hear it. And the supporting cast is alright. They serve their purpose in the story fine enough, and they have the odd charming moment here or there. I like Socks. He's a robotic cat that serves as Buzz's cute, comic relief talking animal sidekick. The humor from him mostly consists of him trying to help because his programming dictates it, but not reading the room due to not fully understanding human emotion and stating everything in an overly matter-of-fact way.
I can provide sleep sounds if you like. Summer night, ocean paradise, whale calls.
No.
Conceptually, it's not the most original way to characterize a comic relief robot, but he gets a mildly funny line here and there. Alicia doesn't get a ton of screen time in the movie overall, but she has some good chemistry with Buzz. You do get the sense that they've been best friends for years and that there's clearly a mutual respect for each other in terms of their relationship of Alicia being Buzz's superior officer. She gets a really well done scene where Buzz returns from a hyperspace test following a time jump only to find a recording of her saying her final goodbyes. It's a subtle, quiet, bittersweet moment showing how much they miss each other and how much they value the time they spent together. It's also interesting to see the contrast of emotions between the two of them. Alicia's on her deathbed and has clearly come to terms with her life coming to an end and that she'll never see her best friend again, while Buzz is more upset as he's just left to take it in then and there. As for the Cadets, they're not bad, but they're not anything particularly special. Throughout the movie, Buzz has an arc about not wanting to work with inexperienced teammates, thinking that they're more trouble than they're worth, but learns to value their help. It's handled fine, but it's not really all that compelling, and the interactions they have feel a little generic. Most of their conversations basically just boil down to, "We're gonna help you defeat Zerg." "No, I'm gonna handle it on my own." "Blast, this obstacle is not letting me progress with the narrative." "Hey, I found a way forward, but we gotta work together." "Okay, fine, eye roll." Followed by either, "Huh, you did surprisingly alright, maybe I underestimated you." Or, "You did not do surprisingly alright, maybe I did not underestimate you." And their chemistry and character development isn't all that fleshed out beyond that. There is one scene where Buzz realizes he's being too harsh on them after Mo is shown feeling genuinely bad about screwing up. To make him feel better, Buzz opens up about how he also struggled a lot as a cadet and almost quit. It's a decent scene, but it still doesn't feel all that earned or like it creates much of a connection between them. Buzz's fears of not being good enough for Star Command is never really explored all that much beyond this scene, so this moment where he supposedly sees himself in the team and realizes their potential rings a little hollow in the long run, especially considering that the fear of failure isn't explored all that much with most of the cadets either. Really, you could just make Izzy the only person that Buzz interacts with on the mission and you would get the same effect. Mo and Darby only contribute to the plot in very minor ways that could very easily be written around if Izzy was the only one present. Also, the comedy isn't really all that funny. Don't get me wrong, it's not horrible, it's never cringeworthy, and some of the jokes land okay, but for the most part the comedic delivery just feels flat. Although it is made a lot more tolerable by the fact that the movie isn't really intended as a comedy, it's more of an action-adventure movie. An action-adventure movie where the action isn't really anything to write home about either. Okay, to be fair, the action is good. It's definitely competently handled. The stakes are very clearly established with Zerg and his robots chasing after Buzz, trying to capture him and the hyperspace fuel, and they're presented as a very capable threat. But the action scenes themselves play it pretty safe and rarely do anything all that unexpected. It's mostly just robots chasing after the heroes while they run away, which is a good basis for an action scene, but they rarely add any extra elements beyond that to escalate the tension, so it usually just amounts to the characters walking away quickly until the villains are gone. That being said, the action scenes do have some occasionally strong moments, like one scene where Buzz is being dragged away by a robot while the cadets try to save him before the robot reaches a teleporter to escape. This scene manages to create some pretty decent tension, as Buzz is relying on teammates with very underdeveloped combat ability to save him, where almost every attempt to harm the robot has little to no effect, while the time they have to save Buzz is constantly lowering and lowering. And the fact that the robot is in no hurry to get away shows that it doesn't even regard the team as a threat, making it all the more intimidating. Okay, now I'm gonna talk about Zerg, meaning I have to get into spoilers, so if you want to avoid those, skip here.
Oh yeah? Well, good riddance, you loony!
So here's Toy Story 2 Zerg.
You killed my father!
No, Buzz. I am your father.
And here's Lightyear Zerg.
You look good, Buzz. Dad? Guess again. Huh?
Yeah, so the movie takes a bit of a different approach to Zerg than what we saw from him in Toy Story 2, which, to be fair, makes sense. It would probably be a little silly for the filmmakers to force themselves to base an entire plot around a throwaway joke that was just inserted for the sake of a Star Wars reference. Basically, this version of Zerg is actually an older Buzz from an alternate timeline. You see, earlier in the movie, Buzz went against the orders of his commanding officer so he could achieve hyperspace, causing Star Command to attempt to arrest him following his return. He escaped, traveling far further into the future, discovering advanced technology and developing time travel. And the reason he's after present-day Buzz is so he'll give him the hyperspace fuel needed to power the time machine, so he can stop himself from stranding the Star Command crew in the first place. But present Buzz decides he's not willing to alter the timeline, as he's come to realize that many people of the Star Command crew, including Izzy, were only ever born because the planet's colonization caused their parents or grandparents to meet. Zerg, however, has become a little obsessive over fixing his mistake after the decades he spent on it, that he's now trying to take the crystal by force, no matter the consequences.
She's not gonna miss anyone if she never meets them in the first place, right?
I gotta say, I'm not a fan of this. At least in the way that it's been executed. I'll give Pixar credit that it's a bold move to take the hero of the story and show how different circumstances could have corrupted him into a selfish murderer, especially with a character as important to their legacy as Buzz Lightyear. But we never get to see the downward spiral his state of mind went through during all those years, which makes his transformation into the villain seem pretty jarring. We only really get to learn what his situation was via exposition, but not the toll it took on him as a character, or how he transitioned to a darker mindset over time. But that's not my biggest problem. That honor goes to the fact that Zerg is supposed to act as a dark reflection of Buzz to show what he could have potentially turned into if he let his desire to fix his mistake escalate out of hand. The problem is that throughout the movie, Buzz is never shown going to any exceptionally unreasonable lengths to make the situation right. I mean, sure, he made a one-way trip to decades in the future to try and solve it, but at least there he was sacrificing his own needs for the sake of everyone else. It's not like he was showing signs of neglecting anyone else's needs for his own insecurity. And throughout the rest of the movie, while he doesn't exactly want to work with the cadets, and that's a character flaw that he learns to overcome, he still acts fairly rationally in ways that he believes are in everyone's best interests.
You know, we could help you.
Star Command Code 2709.3 forbids me from placing unqualified personnel in harm's way.
So this reveal of him going off the rails and trying to essentially kill innocents just doesn't feel earned. It's shock value without the substance to back it up. I think this would have been much better if A, the movie emphasized how alone Buzz was for such a long time, which created an emotional disconnect from other people, making him act more selfishly as a result, and B, and this is the big one, show present Buzz making moral mistakes throughout the movie where he prioritizes his need to redeem himself over the needs of other people that might distract him from that. Like, have him justify his actions to himself by saying that he's saving Star Command from the mistake he made. Have him claim that any compromises he makes are for the greater good, essentially. Then have him meet Zerg and from that finally realize what he's risking turning into and grow as a character. So overall, Lightyear honestly has its fair share of issues in the storytelling department, and in a lot of ways it feels pretty generic and underdeveloped, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy it. Like I said, despite its flaws, the characters and action scenes are handled well enough to be at least somewhat engaging, which manages to carry the movie for the most part. Put it this way, I think if you're in the mood for a reasonably fun sci-fi action movie, Lightyear is completely functional in that regard, and you could do a lot worse, so take that for what it's worth. Anyway, if you enjoyed, be sure to subscribe and click that bell icon to be notified whenever I upload. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you later.